Hey y'all, what's up? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Undrunken podcast. I'm your host, Courtney, and I'm stoked you're here. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop once a month on the 7th, and randomly when the mood strikes me. The Undrunken podcast is where we celebrate life without alcohol and challenge the idea that happiness is just one drink away. So if you're ready to hear relatable, authentic stories about life alcohol-free, you're in the right place. Today's episode, celebrated author and CEO of Quill Publishing, Amy Lee, joins us. She's flipping the table and asking me the questions. We talk about the impact of alcohol on both of our lives, the ups and the downs, and honestly, it was almost like a mini therapy session. One of the things we really both stressed was the importance of connecting. I think this is especially important for those dealing with struggles with alcohol. So, let's jump in. And the rain. Don't
and
forget
the rain and the snow.
I don't know if you can see, but it's beautiful, sunny.
I know, I see some light back there, so that's awesome.
Yeah. My in front of my desk here,
Yeah.
reflecting is a window.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was a virtual or if that was, but I was like, that looks real. That doesn't look like a virtual. Virtuals are too.
Ooh, you know what though? The fact that you thought it might be a virtual means it looks good.
Yeah, it looks great. Especially with all the plants. I love it.
I love my plants. Yes.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
There's more here.
Aww.
My little
Yay.
kitchen.
Yay.
I love my little house. Yeah.
Well, are we ready to rock and roll with your Undrunken podcast? You usually do like an intro of some sort, or how do you kick it off?
I haven't quite decided for the second season all the details yet. So, like, I guess we could just jump in. There's a lot of, the intro with Undrunken. I don't know. I guess it feels like there's been enough shifts that it needs to be updated. Probably a little bit of the format too. I don't know. I really don't. And then I'll be honest, like I'm a little nervous, right? This is talk about flipping the script, right? Being interviewed is I've done it, but it's a little foreign. And I'm super excited and also nervous because it's you, right? I'm just this like
Because it's me.
Well, so there's a few things. One, I know I'm going to feel absolutely comfortable chatting with you. I also have so much respect for you. You're like one of the most intelligent and driven women I know. And I know like you weren't just going to show up and just right? Like you asked me for questions weeks ago and that's really special. Gosh. So one thing about not drinking, man, the feels. Can I just tell you
Okay, make sure that this is in the podcast. This is important because it's hitting home and it means so much to you. I know that. And it has already had such a huge impact on you, both I'm sure positive and negative, but mostly positive because I also know a little bit of your back history, right? Your backstory.
Yeah. But this is a regular thing, just talking and finding myself overwhelmed with gratitude and love and joy, especially around people in my life. It's just such a full area of my life, just good people. And I think a lot of that comes from there was a lot of clarity getting rid of alcohol that allowed me to part ways with some people too. Right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, since I'm taking over your podcast as the host and you're my guest today, my dear, let's give the listeners a little bit of something about you. Tell us a little bit about you, and then what inspired you to stop drinking?
Yeah. So almost 2 years ago, I had lunch with somebody, very close to me who I've known for most of my life. And she's older. I don't know for sure. I think she's in her 60s, late 60s, right? And I hadn't seen her for a few months. And she just got like a glow up, right? Like, I just was like, excuse me? Like, what is this all about? And she just was, oh, I decided to try to stop drinking alcohol. And after 30 days, I just felt so good. I kept with it. And now it's been months and all of this. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I've given up alcohol so many times over my life. Like, okay, the first time I drank alcohol that I remember, I was 9. And it was given to me by a family member. Um, through the times I chose to drink alcohol, I definitely had excess, but I had chosen to take breaks throughout that. And I'd never experienced what I was seeing in this woman. Just a literal glow up. She was radiating. It was so cool. And I was like, huh, okay, so I'm going to try this. I'm going to try taking a break from alcohol, super intentionally, like she did. Okay. Not just giving it up like I did before. Cause I think before it was like, I'm not going to drink, right, for however long or for whatever reason. There was always like this like end milestone, or a reason, right? Like a diet, something, or an event. This was like just be intentional. And then, part of it was journaling. And I'm, for those that haven't listened before, just so you know, I do cuss a lot. I used to say I drink and cuss like a sailor. Now I just cuss like one. I fucking hate journaling. Like, I've been cleaning boxes, Amy, and I cannot tell you how many notebooks I have found that have like 1 page, 10 pages. Like, it's journaling is never something that has come easy or naturally to me. And I think part of that, and here's where it gets a little bit like, this is obviously something that was like programmed, right? If you put it in writing, right? Something about that, there's something, what my mom told me when I was a child, don't put anything in writing you don't want the whole world to see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's just look at this really quick. This is stupid because I'm literally like recording myself on a podcast. Like, the whole world could see this. So what is the difference? And I've explored that a little bit since then. And I know part of it is, there's so much intention with writing. So if you put it down with your pen, like not just typing even, but literally like the pen. And I know this is getting into your arena here. We call it spelling for a reason, right? And the things that you write, especially with a pen and with intention, right, has so much energy. And I think that just scared me for the longest time, or overwhelmed me, maybe is a better way of putting it. Anyway, so didn't like journaling, decided, oh, well, I'll do a podcast. Everybody does a podcast, right? Just to record the journey. I think it's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, who wants to listen to me talk? Like, who am I? And I started figuring out that I actually knew more people than I realized that didn't drink for whatever reason. And so I started thinking, well, what if I interviewed these people? I had no idea what I was getting into, right? Like, part of it for me, when I quit drinking or decided that I wanted to quit drinking, resources were really limited, right? Like, everybody knows about AA, right? If you're an alcoholic, there's a place to go. They've got steps, they've got community sponsors, people to help you, right? Like, it's not a secret. It's anonymous, right? I didn't feel like that was what I needed, but I definitely didn't want to just like do it. And so the podcast actually became the biggest resource for me, right? I was talking with people that had some of them years of not drinking under their belt, for all different reasons. They all had books, they all had experiences. And I was getting all of this like just amazing input. And what ended up happening, so I started interviewing people concurrent with when I quit drinking. I didn't launch the podcast for a couple months, but what happened in that couple months through interviewing all those people, I realized that there was no way I could go back to drinking.
Interesting.
I learned way too much, way too quickly. And maybe even, I think one of the biggest things that's really hard for people when they quit drinking is it's boring, right?
Mm.
I've even interviewed people who describe themselves as boring since they quit drinking, which I 100% disagree with. The most interesting people I know don't drink. Um, I think that to avoid hitting that boredom, I threw myself into the podcast, right? But it became this resource. And the biggest thing is it became a community, right? Like
Mhm.
I was never alone or awkward with being a non-drinker, right? And I think that that was a real big advantage. Even if I was physically in the world alone with it at times, uh, I knew I had a handful of people, right, that had done this, years. And that gave me strength. And so I really then became passionate that the podcast had a place in the world, right? First of all, let's tell some stories of some people. Like the coolest people I know don't drink.
Yeah.
So many, most of the people in my life now don't drink. My best friends don't. Some of them do. I don't really, the ones that do, I don't really notice it. The ones that do that I notice it, I guess I just tend to not hang out with as much,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Well, I think
Uh,
it's evolving, and I think to your point about journaling, like I tried journaling too, and as a writer, you would think that would come naturally. I hate doing
yeah,
blogs. I hate doing journaling. I'll write 100,000 word novel that takes me 3 years to research, but um, what I love about the podcast idea though is you are kind of in a way making it your brand. You are turning the coordinator who doesn't drink into a brand because of this podcast, and it makes you more accountable. It makes you more visible, and when you throw that out in the world and you're manifesting it, that's how we live it, right? And
yeah,
so I think the more that you continue to do this, um, I think your life is just going to naturally progress in the direction that you want it to go. I mean, it already is,
yeah.
right? So,
I mean,
um,
some days.
but for the most part, I mean, if you look at yourself now versus 3, 5, 10 years ago, right? What a huge difference. And part of that is choosing not to drink. Um,
100%. Yeah.
So can you share maybe some of the challenges that you had that you faced in the beginning when you decided to stop drinking? And I know
Um,
you tried this several times. So what makes it different this time that it's going to stick?
I think the way I went into it was different, right? There was an intention of really wanting to know, how do I feel mentally? How do I, like, how does everything feel, right? Like seeing this manifestation in this, friend of mine really got me curious. And I think that was like the difference. Um I've been through a lot of challenges. So, as of right now, it's been about a year and a half since I stopped drinking. I don't have any desire for it when I think about it, because it has come up a few times. I would say more recently than not. Um, I'm again, it's that curious, like, why? I haven't needed alcohol this whole time. Like, what is that going to do? How am I going to feel afterwards? Right. The biggest thing that'll keep you from drinking is remembering a hangover. Like, I, the, f- I think I've talked about this so many times. It's old news, but the first time I got a flu after I quit drinking, I was like, this is bullshit. Like, this is what a hangover felt like, but like worse. Right. And I was like, why would I ever choose to do this to myself? Um, Challenges, gosh, they in AA, and I think a lot of addiction counseling or anything like that, they talk about like, don't make any big decisions the first year.
Mm.
Girl, let me tell you.
That's hard to do because sometimes we're impulsive and
And
you have to feel a void sometimes, right?
you don't realize
So I didn't have any what I would say classic alcoholic issues, right? So I didn't realize how much alcohol was affecting my life, and also how much it was um, a self medicine, right? So work, that was like the first thing that happened, right? Was I left corporate. I went through another merger acquisition. I've been through a handful of those in my adult life. Um, and I said, I just don't want to do this anymore. I was so miserable at my last corporate job. I was literally screaming motherfucker at my computer every day. I was so frustrated and felt so overworked and useless at the same time. And it was such a horrible feeling, just a soul sucking feeling. That's actually how I found kickboxing again. So I used to kickbox years and years ago in San Diego. And then I was just at this like peak of frustration scrolling through Instagram and saw this ad for this gym that I'd been referred to or told about before, but this ad had this girl just punching one of the punching bags. It was laying on the ground. She's just pommeling it. And I was like, that's what I need in my life. And so I went and I joined this gym. And this was all maybe 2 weeks before I quit drinking. And there ended up reconnecting with a friend of mine who I found out also hadn't drank in years. I met this gal, Maggie, who I've interviewed. She's also a musician. She's very passionate about she's totally sober, right? She doesn't smoke weed, nothing. And it was just like such an outlet. And I've found now my personal challenge is that I have a very neurospicy brain, and alcohol actually made it worse but better. Hear me out. When there are 17 TVs going in your head and I can tell you what's on every single one of them, sometimes shutting those TVs off is like magic, right? That's what it was when I was drinking. Now I can just tune them out, right? Like I know how to turn them down. Like I've learned how to manage some of the like the dopamine and the oxytocin and the serotonin that alcohol was just fucking with. Now there's certain things, there's things that I know I'm like, oh, I need to go to a class, or I need to go for a walk, or I need to go lay down, right? Because I'm present in my brain, I'm present in my body. Alcohol was detaching, it was disconnecting me from my body, from my brain. I thought there was something wrong with me, right?
You just have more clarity, when you don't have those chemicals fucking with your brain, like you said. And
Yeah.
I think part of it is just maturity. We get older, we've experienced a lot, we know what we will deal with, what our boundaries are, and what we're worth. And I think all of that comes into play eventually, where the formula just lines up just right, and we're ready. And when we're ready, things just kind of naturally come to us and happen for us because we open ourselves up to it. And I think maybe you were, I don't know, maybe subconsciously you were already thinking about things like that when you ran into your friend and had this glowing meeting with her. I mean, by the way, you look glowing right now. I know we're on Zoom, and but I keep looking at your eyes. I know it's sparkling. Part of it is the sunshine, which I'm so jealous that you've got some sunshine in Seattle right now. I miss home. But yeah, I think the universe has a way of speaking to us too. And the more it talks to us and the more we respond back, it just magnifies.
Yeah, but you
We're
won't
like, here
hear
we
it.
are.
You won't hear it. You won't see it, right? If you're disconnected, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. So I can't tell you if I think this was after I quit drinking, right? It might have been right around, like pretty close. I was somewhere and I came and I was at my friend's house, but they weren't home or they were already in bed. Anyway, I needed to pee. Okay. So I put my phone down And I went around, went over, did my business, came back to my truck, got in my truck and left. And had a like 45-minute drive to get home. I remember thinking as I put my phone down, that's a safe place. I set it down on the floorboard of my truck. So as I was driving away and made the first right turn, it went off in the road. I saved that phone because that was such a blatant example of not listening to that intuitive voice.
Mm.
And so now I don't care if it's something silly like I see a thing of chapstick and a little voice goes, you're going to want that chapstick. I grab the damn chapstick, right? When that voice kicks in, that intuition. I just listened to some podcast, The Mindset Mentor. He was talking about how there's studies that have been done. There are so many neurons, like gazillion neurons in your stomach. It's literally a second brain. Trusting your gut,
Yep.
your intuition is another brain.
Yeah.
You can't hear that if you're putting poison in. Like maybe you can, but think about how much louder it would be, right?
Well, even not putting the poison, the alcohol, it makes me wonder why over decades, millennia, whatever, we have gotten away from that sixth sense. We've gotten away from listening to our intuition. Why is that, you think, that we just don't listen to our gut, even if we're not drinking or whatever?
Well, so I rabbit holed on this whole idea with my friend Garett, who's the host of the Deeper You Go, the Weirder It Gets podcast, because I honestly think, I don't want to get conspiratorial, but I do think that alcohol and the commercialization and the socialization and the cultural appropriation of it is a form of control.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
If you want people to be malleable, they can't be strong. They can't be clear.
Yeah.
I don't know if people realize how subconsciously they are being programmed on this stuff. Watch young adult TV. There almost always is alcohol involved. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a fucking idiot. I know teenagers are going to go out and drink, but why are we glamorizing it? Why are we making it look cool? Have you ever been sober around a bunch of drunk people?
Absolutely.
They are not cool.
No, they're
They
not.
are not.
They're loud, they're belligerent, they're a little too daring.
Oh God, girl, I am the queen of here, hold my beer. Like I'm already like a hard charger. Like, I don't know if I would say an adrenaline junkie, but I definitely chase my dopamine. Yeah, drinking it definitely took that up a notch, and I didn't need that, right? Like, sure, I can jump off that. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of money in it. Right, just like the tobacco industry.
Jinx. But it's also just like America in general. You look at, the Big Macs and the super size and everything else. That's all programmed too, to get us to spend more, eat more, pay into the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, we're not going to
And we
rabbit
can
hole
go
on
down
this
that
too
rabbit
much,
hole.
Amy.
What's
But
that?
we're not going to rabbit hole on this too much. But do you know that there is soy in almost everything?
Yes. And it's the reason why, like my friend Wynn Austin, for example, who totally went her, a new direction where she realized, okay, soy's in everything, sugar's in everything, like all these, gluten, blah, blah, blah. And she totally went, crunchy on us. She went the natural route, right? And, produced her own products. And now they're, selling in Whole Foods or other places. But yeah, I totally understand. But nobody looks at the ingredients, but nobody looks at the label.
It's in almost everything, and it
Where do
is,
they understand what it does to us?
well, so and there will be an episode on this, so everybody can rabbit hole deeper, and then they can reach out to Garett, who can really rabbit hole, because he's like so eloquent and so researched, well researched in his thoughts. But soy is very high estrogen producing.
Yes.
You know what is more high estrogen producing than soy?
Other than ourselves?
Hops.
Oh, and beers.
So
Interesting.
again, I don't want to rabbit hole on this too much, but it is interesting.
Mhm.
What do we push as the man drink? Drink the beer
Exactly.
with your buddies, you know, all that. Have you looked at men? They got some boobs and some stuff going
That-
on. Beer belly, a beer
Mhm.
belly, right?
Mhm.
And then the soy, right? Like, again, I go back to like, if you want your people to be malleable, right? You want them not strong, you want them dependent on healthcare, right?
Mhm.
Make them unhealthy. So like estrogen, like this whole hormone imbalance that the world is, well, I don't know about the world, but at least Americans are like, there's a testosterone deficit, not just in men, in women too, because
Yeah.
our natural testosterone levels are like so massively depleted,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to bring it back to alcohol, right? Alcohol used to be part of ritual, right? It used to be something that, a good example, right? Naturopathic medicine uses alcohol to take the properties of herbs and make tinctures as
Mhm.
medicines, right? Even in some cultures, I think it's still, there's more ritual around it, right? Like that they aren't drinking to get drunk, they're drinking as part of a ceremony,
Yeah.
right?
When you think about like the Catholics, right? You know, they have the blood of Christ and they serve wine. And I'm like, why does it have to be red wine?
Well, hold on there. There's a whole nother conspiracy that we could unpack there, but we're just going to put a little pin in that.
Yeah.
The whole,
That's another podcast.
yes. But it, again, is alcohol the devil? No. But I do think it's important to question why we normalize and encourage putting the same substance inside of our bodies that we use to sterilize hospitals.
Mhm. That's a good question. When you put it that way, right?
Do you remember the old, I want to say it's Mickey Mouse, but old cartoons where they would show like, you know, the character would go into like the cellar and there'd be all the bottles with the like little skull and crossbones on it, and
Yep.
then they drink it and they'd be like, "Ugh," right? And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
literally labeled with death,
Yeah.
you know? And here's the thing, Amy, this is it gets hard because it's like I don't want to get up on some soapbox. I don't want to judge people. I've had a friend of mine told me he loved the podcast, but he found himself feeling guilty, right? And I said, that's not the point, right? Like that's not the goal. I have zero intention for anyone to feel guilty. Like if you like alcohol and it fits into your life, that's great. That like that's it's free will. It's all of our choice, right? But if you choose to not drink, even for a day, I'm gonna celebrate that. And I'm also going to share all the information I learned. Dude, I was a professional, Amy. You know this. Remember Drunk Disney? We had so much fun, you know? But there was also a flip side or a dark side to the ability to drink that much, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm curious about your friend who felt guilty listening to the podcast because I often feel like that is a reflection of how we truly feel.
mm,
Uh, you know, oftentimes when we listen to a conversation or we see something on the news and we're immediately taken back or feeling defensive about it, how much is it a reflection of what's going on inside of us? You know, what we're facing, what we're feeling, and maybe that is that gut instinct or that subconscious coming through that says, "Hey, maybe you should, you know, stop, slow it
right.
down."
I 100% agree. And I think I even said that to him, like, you know, I would explore why you feel that way,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Absolutely.
And, you know, of course, I like, if anything I said, like I'd love to talk, let's unpack it basically. You know, and they're dealing with their own life stuff. And so we haven't had that conversation, but I mean, that's kind of similar to your and I's conversation. You know, I mean, the whole inspiration to having you come on the podcast was when we reconnected, you know, a couple months ago, you were drinking. I don't know if you are or not now. And I think it's okay to share. Your husband had
Yeah.
not,
Mhm.
right? Your husband has not been drinking for a while.
2 years.
And I have. Yeah. And then I obviously haven't been drinking for a while. And you had all these questions. And I was like, gosh, I wonder, what a great conversation. What if have somebody that's just curious about it come on the podcast? And that was like the original idea. And then you went and told me you were going to try to not drink and all this stuff. And I'm just like, okay,
You
so
want to
where
hear
are we
how that
going?
went? Okay, so I was in Seattle for 3 weeks. That's how we connected. Went home for a week, literally saw my husband for one day, and then flew to LA and spent a week in LA. The whole time I was in LA, 12 days to be exact, I did not drink. Meanwhile, my mahjong girlfriends, my sisters, everybody was drinking, you know, playing mahjong, drinking wine, whatever. I chose to drink non-alcoholic beer or coconut water. And honestly, I didn't miss it. When I got home, this is where things go down a rabbit hole for me, is because my husband travels so much and I travel so much. We literally are passing ships in the night. I come home, spend one day, and then I end up going to Tulsa for a conference and speaking at that event, right? But what I found is when I'm alone by myself and I get lonely, that's when I want that glass of wine. And I will limit myself to 1 or 2 glasses of wine. But even then, you know, it's like the light bulb kind of comes on. I'm like, why do I feel like I need this to be my security blanket or my companion? When I can easily just turn on, and binge watch Netflix or whatever. So that's
Uh,
something that I need to explore for myself.
I
But
don't think you're
honestly,
alone.
I haven't drank. The most I've drank was probably in the span of, I don't know, 2 weeks. I maybe had 2 glasses of wine. So yeah, I'm going there, Courtney. And a lot of my friends, like you, I'm surrounded more and more with people who are choosing not to drink. My in-laws, they don't drink now. We used to drink all the time together, when they first moved here. Every Friday, Saturday, we were getting together and drinking over a meal. Not so much anymore. So
Do you feel any different?
3 people told me I look skinnier, which I can't tell. But when I step on the scale, I was like, holy crap, I am 5 pounds lighter. And I've been able to maintain that 5 pounds with doing nothing, no working out, eating as much as I've been eating, and just cutting out the alcohol. And yeah, so that's incentive right there, motivation right there. I'm 50 now, and your metabolism and everything goes down. So you got to take better care of yourself. Um, anyways, let's talk about you, because I want to know more about what are some of the tools or strategies that you may have implemented to continue going down this path, keeping yourself accountable to not, to having that alcohol-free lifestyle.
I want to acknowledge that what you shared is not uncommon and you're not alone. I think that's what alcoholics, that's when their demons come out to play. Right. And I'm not saying that because I think you're an alcoholic. I'm saying that because someone very close to me seems to do okay until they're alone. And then that's when they start drinking again. Tools, God, first and foremost, again, I go back to people, right? Like the podcast was, you said it perfectly, such a huge accountability for me, right? Originally, I was only going to do 100 days, That was my goal. I want to do 100 days of intentional not drinking. I wanted to document the process with the podcast and talking to people. And the resources that I gained just through connecting with people, whether it be a book or a podcast, uh, or a story that just helped me not feel alone. I think I unintentionally created my own tool. I still go back and listen to podcast episodes, my podcast episodes. Like, I know that sounds really like it's such a freaking weird thing for me to say that, oh, you know, sometimes I go and listen to my podcast and it's like, I mean, it is my podcast. I don't know if this is, I want to share that, right? Because I don't think there are enough resources like that, right?
Mhm.
Alcoholic knows they can go to AA. Somebody like you that's just struggling, like, man, I really figured out that when I'm alone, that's when I tend to want to drink. I want to explore that more.
Mhm.
Who do you talk to? Where do
Yeah.
you go? Who do you connect with? Right? Humans need connection. We have to connect. Like, I think certainly the pandemic highlighted this, but even at its like most basic understanding, isolation is the worst form of punishment we've come up with for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to babies thriving because they need that human touch, right? And
100%.
yeah.
You know, and people that, whether it's you made light of it, like, oh, you know, when I'm alone, that's when, you know, for some people that's big, right? And to not know what to do with that and to feel alone with that, it becomes even bigger,
Mhm.
right? And I think that if somebody's curious about not drinking, why wouldn't you just want to hear stories about people that have done it for all sorts of different reasons?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And
Like,
it takes curiosity though, it takes that will to look for it. I mean, whatever it is that we're needing, it's out there. We just got to search for it. And it is hard. I'm not an alcoholic or anything like that, but um, those who do struggle a lot with alcohol and they're alone, it's just so much easier. The path of least resistance is to just sit there, feel sorry for ourselves, whatever it is at the moment, pick up that bottle or whatever. It's easier, especially in today's world, I think, than to pick up the phone and talk to
hmm,
someone. Nobody talks to anybody on the phone anymore. They Snapchat, they text, they whatever. Those 5-second reels, that's all the dopamine that we need, apparently.
oh, I'm so guilty of it. And you know what's interesting about that? Like, okay, tools that have helped, being honest, right? Not being a proud asshole, right? Reaching out when I'm lonely. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, when I first quit drinking, I was in a long-term relationship, and I'm not anymore. And so going from having that companionship, right, to not, that was weird. Because in the past, honestly, like, I'd go out drinking, right? Like, I could definitely tell you that um the last long-term relationship before that, in the 3 months that after that relationship ended, I probably spent about $10,000 on partying,
Mhm.
right? Um, that was just, it was a coping mechanism.
Mhm.
I also figured out it's how I connect, right? Because I'm a little awkward. And so, uh, yeah, that's another
Yeah, the
challenge.
liquid courage. It does, the
100%,
inhibition. Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
Um, I, yeah,
Hence
dating.
the draw.
Wow.
Yeah, hence the draw for alcohol. Um, okay, so
Yeah.
let's switch gears about a little bit. So, what do you think some of the misconceptions are for living an alcohol-free or maintaining an alcohol-free life?
That is boring.
I was gonna say, because I think it's either boring or you're just, what's the word, like a priss, when you're not out there, you're not social, but you're super introvert, there's something wrong with you.
Again, I go back to, right? If you're an alcoholic and you quit drinking, there's a place for you, right? People understand almost the compassion. When you just quit drinking to quit drinking, people are weird about it. Okay. Why? What happened? What'd you do? Did you get in trouble? When are you going to drink again? Oh, just one. It's okay. You don't have a problem, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions that you quit drinking because you have a problem, that you can't handle your alcohol. No, I quit drinking because I feel better. I quit drinking because life's fuller. That's, it's.
Well, and quit drinking because I'd like to save some money for retirement. I mean, we spend so much money on these vices that we have, even if it's not alcohol or nicotine or whatever, if we're just addicted to fast cars, and we're out there getting the latest and greatest, it's sucking money from us that does us no good at the end of the day. So
You made me want to sing Madonna. Fancy cars that go very fast, they never last. Oh no.
you
Yeah,
got to
it's
sing it.
so understanding why you drink, right? I think is part of that. And what I mean by that is oh, there's so many books about it. There's a neurological thing that happens, right? There's a dopamine rush. Some people get it from shopping, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm feeling depressed, so I go on a shopping spree, right? That's that hit, that rush that you get, right? Um, like alcohol, right? There afterwards, it's like, oh, I spent all this money. There's these like regrets, right?
Mhm.
Girl, I love not having that in my life. I never wake up going, fuck my head.
That sounds to me like an abusive relationship where you have your honeymoon stage, then you have all shit goes to hell in a handbag, and then you feel good again, and you're lovey-dovey, you're loving yourself, you're loving the alcohol or each other, right? And then you hit rock bottom.
Okay. I just want you to really, really hold on to that metaphor the next time you think you want a glass of wine.
Hmm. All you listeners out there who are also going through this journey with us, let's think about that next time we want to pick up a glass of wine.
There's this misconception um about wine being good for you.
Right? One glass of wine a day. Mhm. An apple a day.
You actually look at the truth of those studies. I interviewed a gal, Katie Saltzman, who is a health and wealth. Well, she was a health and wellness coach. I think she's like a business coach now. She's a phenomenal woman. But she talked about like those studies were all based off of much older people, a very small group, a very small demographic with like no other pre-existing conditions, right? Like, no.
Okay, well, let me play
You get
devil's
the same
advocate for a minute.
antioxidants from grape juice.
Okay, fair enough. But let me play devil's advocate for a minute because
Please.
every study, there's always going to be, right? One viewpoint or another. There's always going to be that debate. Oh, alcohol is good for you. Oh, alcohol is bad for you. Everything in moderation. Too much of a
Right.
good thing is not a good thing. So how do we as consumers who are curious about this know what to believe and because it seems like it changes all the time. Oh, eggs are
How
bad for you. They're great for you. It's like those things just happen all the time.
I go back to how does it make you feel?
Hmm.
Okay. And that's um I think I have a sensitive constitution, so maybe I do this more. But if you are really truly like listening to how does it make you feel, alcohol's one, right? Um, dairy. Oh, now that's one that people like. I eat dairy, I feel awful. I get bloated, my digestion's all messed up, my joints hurt, my skin starts breaking out. But fuck, it is so delicious, right? I
Mhm.
love, oh my gosh, cheese. Are you kidding? Brie, cheddar, blue cheese. You bring it, all the cheeses. Like my favorite pasta dish forever and ever was quattro formaggio, right? Like give me all the cheese.
All, all four of
Now,
them. That's the quattro.
yeah, now I've had tons of blood work done. I've worked with naturopaths, dietitians, all this stuff. There's no reason, no study, no proof that dairy is bad for me.
But yet your body responds that way. And I think, I don't know, maybe that's a thing with alcohol too. I mean, like I'm Vietnamese, I'm Asian. Most Asians,
You're Asian?
you can't tell. Most Asians can't handle alcohol, which
Right.
is funny because that is so embedded in our culture. In the Vietnamese culture, we say nhậu, and nhậu means literally sitting there drinking with your buddies all day long and eating, like tapas or whatever. Um, but yet we can drink a glass of wine or whatever and turn bright beet red, but we'll keep on going because that's part of our culture.
I'm pretty sure my best friend's got Asian in her somewhere because she drinks and she just gets so like
Yeah, but then most Asians are also lactose intolerant, but not this one. Me, I can eat the cheese and drink the, milk and be
I
totally
think
fine.
you can, Amy.
I think I can.
Yeah. So there's a really good book called The Dopamine Nation, I think. And in it, she's a psychologist and she talks about how you really don't know until you go without.
Hmm.
Right. And that was for me with cheese. I didn't know it was cheese that was causing all these little things, right? My niece had horrible skin when she was a teenager. And I told her, I was like, try taking dairy out. She took dairy out. Her skin cleared up, right? Like we don't know what we don't know. Okay. Wheat is another one. Like that processed enriched bleached flour really messes with my system. Like it causes my autoimmune system to just attack itself. My joints, my bones hurt, right? Like I'm struggling to get out of bed sometimes. Why would I eat it? Why do I keep eating it? Right? Like
Because it tastes good. That's a lot of the reason why we do what we do.
it is. But to your point, you're 50. I'm gonna be 45. It's different, right? When we're kids, God, do you remember adults telling you like, oh, it doesn't hurt now, but just you wait, right? You won't be invincible
Yeah,
forever. Oh, you think
that
you're
cotton
smart now.
candy.
All these things, right? And you're like, damn it, they were right. And
Mhm.
I guess that's the thing, right? So I love when people are curious about not drinking. And my big thing is commit to 100 days, right? 30 days just isn't enough, right? You need that full 90 to 100-day cycle for your body and your mind to really reap the benefits and rewards of not having it. And you also need that time to really, like you were talking about, right? It's when you're alone, that's when you want to drink. Well, if you committed to that 100 days, you would have the time to work through that and figure that out,
Yeah.
right? It's if you're curious about it, just try it. If you make it 12 days, that's 12 less days that you were choosing to put alcohol in your body. Okay. Now, again, I go back to, right? Like, I don't ever want people to feel judged. If you don't drink for one day, I want you to know I celebrate you the same as if you don't drink for 27 years, like some of my guests, right? It's making a choice that's good for you, that benefits you. The reason I started Undrunken, I love that you said it's a brand because now I've kind of got this like little bit of like fire in me, was to have a place because I didn't feel like I belonged, right? So undrunken. I'm not sober. I don't identify with the word sober, right? I never felt like I was an alcoholic, right? But I'm not drunk, and I'm not going to be a drunk, or I'm not going to get drunk again, right? Undrunken. I don't know. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, no. Well, I celebrate you. I think it's amazing that not only are you doing this journey for yourself, but you're also helping others through this platform. And I mean, never in my wildest dreams would I think that I would be on an Undrunken podcast talking about alcohol. I mean, I've been on a bazillion, gazillion, podcasts, and it's always about, books and publishing and congenital heart defects and trauma, but not alcohol. And that is the reach and the power that you have by just sharing your story, being curious, and starting to reach out to people, because that's where it starts, right? Just that one little droplet turns into a big wave. So I commend you for that, honey, and more power
Ripples,
to you.
ripples. Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
you talk about trauma, like, I do think that alcohol, I was always really proud of myself, right? Been in counseling most of my life, really faced challenges and trauma head on, right? Like, I mean, I was in an abusive relationship, right? And as it was happening, like, there was a part of me that was like, I knew it, and why I was still in it, I couldn't tell you, right? And then I could one day, and it was waking up and leaving that and learning from that. Mountains do not rise without earthquakes.
Yeah. Yep.
And not drinking, in combination with some plant medicine, I was able to see just how much I was allowing those traumas to be very active in my life, right up until last year. And there wasn't a lot of room for grace and compassion for myself with alcohol in my life. And I think that's because innately my gut, I was poisoning myself. I was turning my brain off so that the heart didn't have to feel, all these things. I think that those of us that have trauma are the least served by alcohol, right? I think it's a godsend and a testament to your strength that you're not an alcoholic, because I know your story.
I think I found my outlet, and that was writing. I mean, you and I worked together in a corporate environment, for me, 20 plus years in tech and telecommunications. And then I had a life quake situation where my mom died, and that was what pivoted me towards this self-discovery, and dealing with the trauma of the past and our boat refugee experience, leaving Vietnam after the war and all that stuff. And I think when we find our purpose, when we find an outlet to replace that which brought us down, like you said, mountains don't rise without earthquakes. It's something that we have to rise to because of our trauma. And we have to lean into that. When I look at you, honey, I think, well, I wonder, why can't you take this even further? Why can't you be a speaker on a TEDx stage and talk about this? Why can't you, I know you're not a writer, you don't journal. Why can't you take the transcripts from these podcasts and turn it into a book and use that as a tool, not only for yourself, but for others? Use that as a lead magnet, monetize it in a way that is meaningful, because I think you're only scratching the surface here. And I think you're going through this journey for a purpose. And the purpose is not for you, to be honest. It's for the millions of people out there who need you.
That feels right. That's why I'm crying, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
there's this little in my
Mhm.
head, right? Or my
Mhm.
heart that's saying all the things that you're saying, I think first and foremost, probably before I launch, I want to create a nonprofit for this and open it up. I need people. I need an army, right? Like I'm part of the reason that I put the podcast on break was because while the podcast was connecting me to people and giving me the community I needed, I was going to battle alone. I was fighting the war all by myself. I was finding the interviews and the people, and I was scheduling them, and I was doing the interviews, and I was editing the episodes and advertising, and I was just I say I was trying to do it all. I was doing it all.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
I just don't want to do it alone.
you got to put it out there. You got to put it out there that you don't want to do this alone. And the universe is listening. Your podcast community is listening. Once you launch and put that out there, or just put little snippets out there, whatever. But I think the more, you talk about glimmers and stuff like that, the more often we do things, the easier it's supposed to get. And the more amplified our message is supposed to be. I for me, it's like the more I share my story, the more empowered I feel. I used to cry like every time I say the word mom or whatever, Vietnam, mom, whatever, those two things together would always make me cry. Every podcast, me crying. But the more I talk about it, the more I'm on stage. And I used to be super like fucking scared of the stage. But I've somehow managed to embrace the fact that, okay, I am a speaker. I'm an author, I'm a publisher, but I'm also, damn it, a speaker. And what I have to say is important. And even if just there's one person out there in the audience that feels like that resonates with them, then we've done our job. Because then we're starting to build that little army, because they're going to go out and share, and so on and so forth. And I think tomorrow's a new day for all of us. And I think you're going to wake up and you're going to remember this conversation that we had. And I think you're going to be very intentional about what you do next, whether that be starting down that road of opening up, starting a nonprofit, whether that be looking at how you can make this into a bigger stage for yourself. Like I said, TEDx, TEDx Bellevue or whatever, just go and apply and do it.
Don't
I
know
know
what
you
these
can.
things are. How did you find out about these things?
Gee, maybe I'm in the speaker world.
I mean, Amy, I think you're right. And I do a lot of public facing work. So I don't have a problem. Like there's zero nerves at the idea of speaking on stage, especially if I had, help writing a nice speech.
You don't even need to write a speech, honey. You just need to speak from the heart. And you can say the same story over and over again, because just like fucking Facebook algorithms, only 0.1% are going to be reached at any given time. So that you got to keep saying it over and over until you die. And you're like I said, you're going to build that little army, and they're going to continue carrying on the work and the messaging and continuing to help other people. But it's already starting with you. And maybe that is part of your purpose, to go through these painful moments in this journey so that you can get to this point, this jump off point, Yeah. And trailblaze. Because I can totally see it. I can see you like move over Tony Robbins. You know, move over whatever his wife is. I keep forgetting her name. You
I
know,
don't think that's his wife. She's just another author with the last name.
that's his wife.
Mel Robbins?
No, not Mel.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll Google that later.
Um, I'm curious as you know, maybe you can come on and we can talk about your whole story, or maybe your husband could come on, but what has it been like for you living with somebody? Because I often talk to the other person, right? That quits drinking. And then, I got a friend that I interviewed. They haven't drank in over 25 years, but their wife does. And they're like, haha, I make fun of her and I drive her fast cars. I mean, what?
Yeah, so living with a husband who chose to not drink and has not drank for 2 years, it's a different kind of loneliness, to be honest. And because it is a social thing, and when you're married to someone who no longer will sit there and have a shot of whiskey with you or, whatever, it just doesn't feel right. Like you're mourning the loss of a life that you once had together. And it takes time to get adjusted and used to that new normal, just like everything else. Um, but when the love is there, and clearly there is between Joe and me, we support each other. Um, he would come home and pour me a glass of wine. You've had a rough day, or, even if you didn't have a rough day, here, have a glass of wine and decompress and sit with me, you know? And for me, it's like, okay, you're choosing not to drink. That's fine. I'm not going to throw it in your face, and force you to drink with me. I totally respect that. I started going out and looking at non-alcoholic beers and wines, and, we can still drink together. Put it in a fancy glass or a mug, a chilled ice mug. um, and it's like, I don't know, it's like a faux thing, FAUX thing. And I'm okay with that. But it takes time for sure to get used to it. Um, but I love and respect that man so much. And he does with me as well, where he's not going to force me to stop drinking, but he does educate me. And I think that's part of the reason why I became curious, because I started seeing him in a different light. 2 years have gone by. And if I didn't think he was sexy then, he is way more sexier now. He has shed a lot of fat, that beer gut that we talked about. Not that he ever had it, but now I can see his six pack abs. You
Yeah.
know, go Joe. I mean, he wakes up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, does his workout, does his thing, eats healthy, makes his, smoothies or whatever. And because he's living that lifestyle, it's natural that
Yeah.
osmosis will happen.
Well, there's so something that happens, I think. I would say there's a trend that I've noticed with people who successfully give up alcohol. They almost become addicted to those wins, right? Like
Yes.
it's a gal, and I refer to a lot of the people that I've interviewed, but Gentry, she even started a podcast this year called Addicted to Quitting, because for her, it became a stack, right? She quit drinking, she quit this, she quit this, she quit this, and started building all these other healthy habits. Yeah, same. Honestly, like you describe your husband's day, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I wake up before my alarm is set to go off at 5:30, and that's just because that's the time I find that I like to start my day. But honestly, I wake up before it almost every day.
Mm.
And I work out almost every single day, except when I go on like crazy foodie adventures with my best friend and eat a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't, and then my body hurts for days. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's life, right? You still got to live life.
Oh my goodness, the mashed potatoes.
Um,
Tiramisu.
is there any wisdom that you would like to give to the community that's listening whether they're struggling, whether they're on the same journey, whether they've, you know, reached certain milestones, or the family that has an alcoholic in their life, what could you tell them?
Don't be alone. And it's the hardest thing for some of us, but the easiest way to find what you need is connecting. You know, I trauma response, right? Very hyper independent. I can do it. I don't need help, right? And what my cycle was for years, especially with drinking, was I would turtle. I would withdraw from friends, especially family, certainly, when I was having a hard time. What happened a few years ago, even before I quit drinking, was I got a friend who recognized that, because she's the same way, but more importantly, saw a way that she could love me that in a way no one else could. So when I would turtle, I would just randomly get a text, "Hey, what are you doing?" Right? What I discovered through that, of course, coupled with the podcast, is like people want to be there for us, right? And it's our own rackets in our own head that convince us we're bothering people. Here's the thing I know. If I call you and you don't want to talk to me, you won't answer. Why I don't just call people, I don't know. I'm still working on that one. So my thing would be, don't be alone, right? Call people, find people, listen to the podcast. Honest, like I love the episodes because they feel like they're just, you're sitting in a room having a conversation or listening in on a conversation, right? Find connection somehow, somewhere. You know, if that's listening to my podcast and then maybe reading one of the books somebody recommends. I used to talk about my favorite songs, right? Like, find connection somewhere with someone, hopefully healthfully, right?
Yeah. And
Reach
keep
out.
trying. That's the thing. Keep trying and not giving up, because, oftentimes we're like, oh, okay, we call one person or we call two people, whatever. They don't pick up because they live crazy lives or they don't want to talk to us, whatever. And we start creating these stories in our head. I don't care. Like they don't care. I don't matter, whatever. I'm not worth it. And so we give up. And then we're left to our own devices. We feel lonely, alone, and then we start
Society is designed for us to be connected, but we're not, right? How
Yeah,
much time do you spend on Facebook connecting?
right. Yeah, we don't.
Right? Like, we're so connected, but really it's so long. Like, I'm sorry. If you look at my Facebook and my Instagram and you only think that's who I am, you don't know me. I am a lot darker at times than most people ever see, right? Like, you have a past that a lot of people don't know about. I'm not afraid to talk about it, but it's not like I don't live it, right?
Yeah,
I am a rape, abuse, incest. I don't even like saying victim or survivor. I was raped. I was abused. I was a victim of incest. Whatever. I don't know how to say it. Um, and those things, right? I grew up with alcoholics, right? I grew up with I had two dads and both of them were alcoholics. One was a fucking mean asshole drunk and one was an absent, just jolly
yeah.
drunk, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. You've kind of got me thinking maybe like that authenticity is what's missing. Maybe I should have shown people how sad I was. And that's why I quit the podcast, and just telling them, right? Like, hey, we're on a break. But I didn't say why. I didn't say that I was just overwhelmed doing it by myself. I didn't say that I was heartbroken. I didn't say that somebody I loved was drinking themselves to death. I just said, I'm out.
Well, the other thing too, though, you don't owe anybody an explanation. What you deserve is just to sit with it for a minute and figure out a strategy, a plan, and talk to people that you trust that are close to you, you know?
Yes.
You
And
don't,
that's what I did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And good for you for doing that because it is so easy to just slide underneath the rug and pretend it doesn't exist or that we'll get over it, you know, and
Yeah, but
trauma
don't you think
doesn't.
in a situation like this, it would have being authentic would have served my audience better? Not that I owe anybody an explanation,
Yeah, but
but
when
don't
you
you think that
when
somebody out
you're
there,
on, you're authentic. You don't have to always be on, you know. You also have to protect yourself. Um, I always one thing that I learned from being in a horrible relationship, also an abusive marriage, is you don't give anybody, no matter who they are, 100% of yourself. Because when you need to depend on yourself, what's left, right? You have to save at least 25-30% of the love and the everything, the devotion that you give to others. You got to reserve some of that for yourself. Um,
or
Otherwise,
be like me and you just go all in on yourself and you know.
or yes. There actually, you know, I support that statement 100% because we should be our first loves.
Look, I walked away from a man that I still love very, very much because we wanted different things. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done, but the biggest act of self-love. And I know, or rather hope, like I'll get over it, right? Like, but that was not easy, and also not something I think I could have done if alcohol had been part of my life. To have that level of self-worth and self-love. Now, could I have done it better? Yeah. But I still, and for me it's you talk about like bottom, right? Reaching that rock bottom, reaching that point, right? I don't know that any other bottoms would have been let me more bottoms have become enlightened to me by removing alcohol. I'm just grateful I didn't have to hit rock bottom with alcohol. I'm not saying that I haven't had some bad moments. I'm just grateful I didn't have to hit rock bottom with alcohol to realize those bottoms and all the other things.
Mhm.
I don't know if all that
You made sense. I
tracks.
got it. Yeah.
You know, I Amy, I don't think I ever felt like I belonged. Right. And I do feel like those of us who don't drink just because of whatever, we're kind of misfits a little bit. And maybe that's why this is so easy for me. It's because I've never felt like I belonged. And so to kind of be creating this whole like segment of people, the undrunken, right? Like, a little cheesy, but kind of tracks.
Yeah. You found your tribe. You know, you found you and you are your tribe. And when that light is shining bright, there will be more that will find you. And it's just only going to get bigger and better from here.
Yeah. Well, I definitely, like I said, I think you're right. Like it's more platforms, more help, put the call out, let the warriors rise.
Mm-hmm.
That just makes me smirk.
I feel like you and I just had our own therapy session.
I mean,
Why
like
aren't we doing this more
always.
often?
You could be my weekly segment. And now Undrunken chats with Amy and Nay. Oh, I love it.
On our own TV show.
That would be fun.
I want to thank you for inviting me to be on your show, for trusting me enough to host the show by flipping the table and asking you the questions. Because I think it's just as important for your listeners to hear your side of the story and what you're going through. So with that, thank you very much, and I love you.
I love you too. Thank you, and let's do this again sometime.
Yeah. Yes. Let's do it.
Thanks for joining me today. If you liked this episode, please share it. You can tag me on Instagram at Undrunken Podcast. And if you or someone you know has a story to share, or you're interested in knowing more, please reach out. I love that you joined me today, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I leave you with the wish that you make good choices and take good care of yourself.